As a rule, when the courts overturn a law for violating the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, federal or provincial governments either appeal it to the very top or redraft the offending legislation to ensure those rights and freedoms are respected. Ontario's not taking either approach. Ford recalled the legislature Thursday and announced a plan for a marathon sitting over the weekend to push through legislation invoking the notwithstanding clause. A final vote is expected Monday. Ford's not the first premier to try to invoke the notwithstanding clause. He's not the first to spark a debate over whether it's being used the way its framers intended. The Constitution's notwithstanding clause exempts legislation from judicial scrutiny, endangering fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Charter, former federal Justice Minister Alan Rock tweeted in response to the Quebec bill. Hard to imagine a case justifying its use. Yet it is becoming alarmingly common. Time to speak out. The notwithstanding clause was a vital part of the constitutional negotiations that led to the Charter being adopted in 1982. Without it, some provinces were unwilling to come on board. He wrote in those who argue that the notwithstanding clause is somehow illegitimate actually bear the onus of explaining how the rest of the Charter would be legitimate without it. Now it's Ford's turn to launch another argument over the value and purpose of allowing governments to override the courts and the basic rights guaranteed by the Charter. Edmonton moves to remove and rename all references to those tied to residential schools. Canada commits 100 million COVID-19 vaccine doses for poorer countries at G7 summit. Urban gardening on Larry Utek. New trucking rules take effect Saturday. The Muttert Conservatory, Edmonton's downtown escape, is springing back to life. Montreal should have a good summer. Public Health Director Dr. Mylene Drouin. Athletes back on Calgary Olympic oval ice for first time in more than a year. Feds say they'll complete vaccine deliveries to territories this week. 200 Manitobans with intellectual disabilities. Sensory issues still waiting for COVID-19 vaccine. Bear rummages through family's SUV in Coquitlamway are in a dire situation. Dr. Jazz Atwal urges COVID-19 protesters to take action virtually, not in person. The numbered treaties. What history got wrong and how to make it right. Fire rips through Chester Playhouse. Stan Marshall's exit interview. Overcoming the Muskrat Falls crisis. Rebranding Nalcor and dealing with Quebec. Majority of people in Manitoba ICUs unvaccinated. Health official says rooftop fire sends black smoke billowing above unfinished Halifax apartment building. Is Section 33 a legitimate tool that governments can use as they see fit? Or is it a nuclear option, as Rock has put it, that was intended by its creators to be used rarely, if at all? When you use the notwithstanding clause, you're saying, I'm doing something that cannot be reasonably justified in a free and democratic society, said Liberal pundit David Hurrell in a debate on this weekend's edition of CBC's, and you have to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Jenny Byrne takes the opposite view. The former top aide to both Ford and Stephen Harper argued the notwithstanding clause was put into the Constitution to ensure public policy would be made by legislators, not the courts. So I truly believe that this is the right move to make, she said. In fact, I'm not sure what the controversy is. Byrne insisted the Ontario law is designed to limit the influence of third parties by restricting how much they can spend in the 12 months before the election. That restriction would kick in with the province's next fixed-date election, set for June 2, 2022. Ford's critics argue he's trying to muzzle unions and other groups who oppose his government. NDP leader Andrea Horwath called it a power grab. Others have called it dictatorial and undemocratic. For Hurrell, who now runs the Gandalf Group, the issue isn't the elections bill itself but the fact that Ford is only the latest politician, and very likely not the last, to use the notwithstanding clause to further a narrow political agenda. I think in an ideal world, we would get rid of Section 33, Hurrell said, acknowledging politicians' lack of enthusiasm for engaging in constitutional reform. But I do think we need to restore the stigma against using it. It needs to become something a government is embarrassed and afraid to use, for fear of pushback. Brad Wall's Saskatchewan party didn't pay a price either. The party was re-elected to another majority government under Scott Moe in 2020. Is Ford an easier political target? Byrne thinks so. She told but the determination you make is that your position is right and you want to move forward because it is the right thing to do, she said. Right or wrong, Ford leads a majority government and almost certainly will get his bill through on Monday, notwithstanding any criticism directed at him, or at the increasingly common use of a constitutional tool that many have regarded as a political weapon of last resort.